Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crucible. We are excited to be bringing you some games today as Play Day 1. We just finished with our quals the past 2 weekends. So we are going to jump into meeting our casters first and foremost. We're going to be joined today by Jasmine and Goose. So kind of looking at our first matchup, which is going to be the Washington Wizards versus QoR. Goose, can you tell me a little bit about the Washington Wizards?
There isn't a whole lot. Obviously, we have a lot of veteran players and just, overall depth of skill in this roster. But this set roster has only played 3 qualifiers and hasn't qualified for any event aside from this one, which is going to be closed. You obviously had them play in the Element 4 qualifier after not having the 3/5 of the CL4L roster. Didn't qualify for E4. Going over to SI quals, they got close to closed, but weren't able to make it and didn't qualify for SI between both Qual 1 and Qual 2. Now going all the way over to the Crucible, making their way through close quals, one against SSG Academy, going 2-1 against them, a very close game. And then even after that, eventually getting a forfeit win, essentially because QoR already qualified through one of the open quals. So sure, it is a very deep roster. You have players like both Woos, who's been on a previous Pro League roster, obviously having his ex-teammate Vino on the X-Makers roster. Then obviously you have Asian Pro League talent, and Fens and Center, who were previously just teammates on Wildcard Academy, which is a roster that had a lot of potential but just never really went into that stratosphere. So there still is a lot of time for this overall roster to really create an identity, because they don't really have one. They haven't been given that opportunity in the Crucible. Especially this group stage is going to be essentially their first opportunity to create that.
So it really sounds like to me that this team is really looking to establish themselves tonight and within this group stage. So we're hoping that they will be showing up and showing out. But we also have to take a look at their opponents, QoR.
Absolutely. You got Moses, Inrio, Candle, Rival, and Twist. This is a squad that is kind of the opposite of the Washington Wizards in a way. They have their own identity, but I also think that they share some similarities where they're trying to find their play style. It's a lot of individual pieces that build this team, and they're very strong pieces indeed. However, as a team and as a unit, middle of the pack at best, I feel like in tier 2, at least in the upper echelon of the current teams that exist. And I think that that's kind of the point that we're making here. They couldn't beat teams like SSGA, and they even lost to Washington Wizards 2-0 in SI quals. So those are like higher placement tier 2 teams, but they can beat teams like Evil Connections and Outlast, which they indeed did heading into open qual number 1, 4-1 in the group stage, and then just flawless into the qualification spot. They're a good team. They're a solid roster. They're a team that's been together for a very long time. However, definitely need to kind of etch themselves in as a top tier 2 team.
Gotcha. So this sounds more like a little bit of a grudge match if you're saying that they've played each other before.
That's correct. They have Washington Wizards and QoR, SI quals, like I said. So that was an important match. It was in close qualifiers. I feel like QoR were giving their best effort. They even beat LIS, I think, in that same qualifier. Might have been a different one. But yeah, they have previous history here. They have previous. I guess it is a grudge match. Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Well, speaking of their history a little bit, if I remember correctly, QoR has been known to play on Cafe. It's one of their favorite maps. I'm pretty sure they played it 4 or 5 times in the qualifiers for this league. So I'm curious to see what maps they're going to be taking us to tonight. So if we can take a look at the map bans pretty quickly here.
Yeah, Cafe's banned first, so there you go. No Cafe for QoR.
I mean, you also have Consulate ban, which is a little bit of a surprise to me. In quals, they didn't play it a whole lot, but historically, QoR is a team that is very comfortable on Consulate. So to see them in an outright maybe is a sign that they don't want to take Washington Wizards here. QoR is a team that is just very deep in just prepping, making sure that they are well up to date on their opponents, especially with their coach doing so much work. One of the best T2 coaches in the entire scene so far. So I think a lot of these bans, especially it's a best of one, that you do have an extra chance to ban maps. You're going to have an extra chance to put a lot of more thought and effort. And I do really think that QoR is going to kind of try to plan out this entire matchup, starting with trying to get just the right map that they really want.
Yeah, playing on one map can be a big thing.
Well, bans coming through. Core getting rid of maps I would try to typically expect. They're not really a great bank team. As a matter of fact, it is their permaban. Consulate, kind of surprising, honestly. They've played it before. They have a lot of experience on it. Skyscraper being the map of choice. This is interesting just because in recent times, Core have had a lot of success on Skyscraper. However, it is also one of their most banned maps. So I am a little surprised to see Skyscraper get through, but
Yeah, and I think Skyscraper, again, is one of those maps that is purposeful. If we go back to the qualifier, the closed qualifier, and the best of 3 against SSG Academy, out of the 3 maps, the only map that they lost to SSG Academy was a 4-7 loss. And keep in mind, as I said previously, there isn't a lot of VOD on Washington Wizards. So this does really seem like a map that, Core was just trying to take what they could really get with the limited amount of VOD review possible.
Yeah, that's really valid to say. What about you, Jasmine? Any last thoughts?
Sure, yeah. So I think that obviously the one thing coming into this game is kind of looking at Washington Wizards and looking at this as a lineup in the future and a lineup that persists after this. This is kind of the continuation of CL4L. So I'm interested to see how this roster is going to pan out. We've obviously seen a lot of pug stacks go very far. And I'm wondering if this is the beginning of the Washington Wizards. I feel like if they can beat Core, that's the way to do it.
All right. Well, I am super excited to watch this game tonight. Like you mentioned, this is sort of an ex-CL4L team, and they were kind of the underdog Cinderella team in the recent leagues. So I'm excited to see if they can kind of keep that energy going as they look to establish their name tonight and within this league. And, their opponents, Core, if we can keep this grudge match energy going, I'm excited tonight, and I hope that you guys are just as excited as I am.
I got a smile just wrapped right around my face right now. I'm so excited. See? You can see it. No, you can't. Well, I was smiling. Anyways, Washington Wizards, Core Gaming.
And if you have watched not only competitive Siege, but just played the map yourself, in whether it just be casual or ranked, you understand how hard of a map it is for Skyscraper to just really attack on. It is a map that is one of the most defender-sided maps throughout in the entire competitive pool. That 4-2 split for the defense is essentially normal. It is even. If Core is able to get more than 2 rounds starting on this attack, that'd be great. It's going to be fantastic, especially with bans. I really love the Deimos ban in specific because it's just kind of one of those bans where it allows you to just completely take away that vertical play. Obviously, you still have, Buck. You can use your drone economy to figure out that info, but you don't have that hard ping. You don't have that operator that can bring a lot of that focus. And I think that will give a lot of flexibility both teams just playing throughout all the map, especially on those defensive extensions.
Yeah, like you said, Skyscraper, definitely very difficult to attack. I feel like that's the one thing we're going to be looking at for Core is just how many they can tally up. It's not a necessity for them to win the entire half. If they could, that could be a very daring sign for Washington Wizards. But I think them getting, the confidence to start on defense, even if they're not as well prepared of a team as Core might be, I think that having that defensive start, that can really make wonders for your chances of winning this game. But yeah, Washington Wizards going for a typical T side. Nothing really too out of the ordinary. You also have that office extend, like you were mentioning. Kind of the only way to really play this map, to be honest. I mean, that's just the truth, man. Like, yeah. you could get a baby on this map, have him play like 5 games of Skyscraper, you just understand. You just would know. You just know how to play the map. Anyone does.
Yeah, and it's also kind of one of those things because it's so just standard stocked in the structure that you're not going to be able to really bring a lot of different things because essentially not only do you have those 5 defenders, but you also essentially have almost as a semi 6-man, that being the map itself, because it's essentially so disconnected and just the way it's laid out with the lack of soft walls in between this extension over by meeting and then going over back to the bomb site. And I really love just specifically this open wall being paired with the reinforced walls because it allows for these Wizards defenders to play very aggressive, make sure that Core cannot take this control relatively easily, and they have to really value if they want to use that, attacking utility to try and clear this space or try to go for maybe a different avenue.
Without a zombie in place as well, kind of walking into a sort of a what am I looking for? Funnel. Walking into a funnel can be very dangerous, and I feel like it's not a viable strategy that QoR can exercise unless they get rid of these Kivas and unless they get map presence somewhere else. But it seems like the office over is just going to be the full take. There's not going to be any presence towards Black or Wave just yet. That'll probably come at a later time. They're just looking to extend Moses as far as he can, get the max amount of value before they finally have to start clearing out utility. One of those Kivas will get expended on the drum wall, immediately taken down, but they still have to deal with Bino here playing behind that drum wall.
Yeah, and I think one of the most notable things just I've noticed so far on Lucky C4 there is that there isn't really any presence on that first floor. There isn't really any phantom pressure or any roam. You can see that Bino's pertaining, maybe entertaining the idea of going down below, but there is no real threat for QoR on the backside. So they can essentially play directly onto this site and just play right in front of them. They don't have to worry about somebody going for the flank. They don't really have to put a lot of presence on that flank watch, and it allows for them to play very comfortably, just trying to focus on getting this control in Geisha, and then eventually into the execution phase.
Yep, QoR are going to have to move here. They've got 50 seconds left. Might actually have the first fight going into their hands, but Twist actually looks away just as Asian sprays him down. Won't be able to get the finish there, but Candle will most certainly get taken down. Moses trying to make a play, and Asian finds his second kill of the round as he also claims Swiss outside the window. It's all up to Rival here, going for that late round lurk. However, it's not enough to win a 1 versus 5. It's Washington Wizards get themselves a pretty good start, and Ben's dot
I noticed that
too. All right.
Yeah, that was a round where, as we talked about in the early phase, that there was a lot of overall defender presence on that extension, but the problem was that Wizards fell back relatively early on. They didn't try and contest that extension on QoR, try and give them really a hard problem, rather just relying on that map to kind of waste more of the time. And kind of allowing for QoR to just do their, kind of due diligence, clearing that map. And again, as I said before, there was no real flank or roam presence, whether it be below or a player trying to rotate and get that backstab. And because of it, it allowed for all 5 players to really focus on just denying those entry points. That main point being that Geisha control. Just getting 2 kills on that single wall in Geisha. It's kind of a situation where you do see a lot of rounds, especially on a skyscraper attack for QoR, is they'll put a lot of focus into essentially the entire round, falling down to the execution phase, and that's exactly what the Wizards wanted them to do.
Just wasted time, like you said. Had that presence of the Kivas as well. So that was a little challenging from QoR, but now QoR switching over. Going to be attacking office, pretty much bringing the exact same lineup, I think, as they had last time. I think Candle, with the addition of the Flores? Yeah, he was on IQ last round. So that's probably the best adaptation we're going to get here, although Candle's driving his Flores into a bathroom. I guess he's checking for intel. I can see that. I see the vision. But already, yeah, Washington Wizards, I mean, pretty light hold towards this side of the map, kind of just opening up the wall. You have both Mutant Friendly here, where most of the fighting is going to happen. Probably over by that terrace side, by that drum area, where the Azami is currently sitting, where Woos is most likely to fall back from. You want to get him out of here as soon as possible, even if it means driving him away rather than killing him. Regardless of what it should be, Woos is definitely going to be the problem at the end of the day. But first, you have to get through Asian and Fens holding over towards that office side, or over towards that T side, actually.
Yeah, another thing I've noticed is on a lot of these extended points, you can notice that Wizards, they set up kind of this mirage of a lot of, roaming presence of an immediate threat. But aside from these head holes, aside from, maybe there being a defender down there, there is no real threat. There is no real defender presence, and it's just another one of those things that Wizards are just deploying to just kind of waste time, to trick QoR into thinking that they could maybe be playing in here, to just waste time, maybe even waste a drone. You can see there is no real presence. Even with the wall open, it kind of is just allowing for them to say, you're welcome in, you can come right into the bomb site. And with these cross positions, especially over by Dragon, it woos with the first onto Twist. It really is just kind of a trap.
Well-timed aggression there from Washington Wizards, but they're immediately cut down thanks to the setup by QoR, who, like you mentioned, just really didn't they didn't bite on that Washington Wizards phantom pressure. They just decided that they were going to walk straight at the bomb site. And I can't say that the results are exactly positive just yet, considering the only amount of map control that QoR really have is in that bottom floor. Otherwise, QoR are stuck on the outside, and they are trying to break through this wall here. And they're immediately going to try and do that with Moses, making his way into the bomb site. Case in hand, might be trying to go for a plant, but if he does, he'll immediately be spotted, most likely be taken down. It's a very dangerous position for Moses to be in, and with Fens getting in Rio, it's just all collapsing here. Washington Wizards, untamed aggression, and QoR just simply can't handle it. 2 for the defenders.
I am very pleasantly surprised by this Washington Wizards team so far, is because, as you spoke about, this is essentially a semi, pug stack. When E4 happened, there was a week before they were removed from the invited teams, and then had that week to get 3 new players. And, I think, again, this is a team that obviously it does have a lot of skill and just experience behind it, but it also has a lot of, chemistry. Bino and Woos being 2 previous teammates, and Fens and Centaur, obviously a lesser time with, less success, but they still did have experience together, and then also bringing that, an addition of, pro league experience with Asian. It's kind of a situation where I really do think the sky is the limit for this team, because there's so much just cohesion and chemistry. It allows for them to just really problem solve phenomenally. And they've done back-to-back rounds a fantastic job of just setting up a honeypot trap, luring in QoR, and then just completely flooding and converging them, trapping them in a small space with really no avenues to get out of it.
This is really just the Washington Wizards are just kind of a T2 all-star team. A lot of accomplishments between these players. Asian and Woos, obviously, like you've been mentioning, pro players, ex-teammates, now teammates once again. I honestly look at this roster and I feel like the only player who hasn't really accomplished much, however, is still very good, and I think has what it takes. Center. That's about it, though. Fens winning element. I think it was element 2 with Envy. Asian and Woos, like we mentioned, pro league players, very well accomplished. Bino making a major. I mean, these are all players that have done their own separate things and have achieved separate. Centaur, probably a lot of his credentials in console. I mean, there's so much. There's a wealth of different experience on this Washington Wizards lineup. And I think the one thing that I'm really impressed by, honestly, they're aggressive, but they're not too aggressive. I'm not seeing a lot of brazen plays out of Washington Wizards. This is a team that is playing very smart.
Yeah, they're doing a phenomenal job of just not only playing to the strengths of the map, essentially kind of letting the map do its own work, waste its own time without having to use a lot of, extended defender utility or even presence, risking the lives of defenders. And this has allowed this Wizards team to, when it comes into that execution phase, keep in mind essentially the main game plan for every round for QoR, to essentially have that solidified 5-man count. They're not losing these players early on. Dev shutting down Rival, such an important player on the Doki, and no immediate trade back is going to force QoR to get aggressive.
There it is. 1 kill for Candle. Swings into stage, but it's a little too overzealous as Fens just guns him down. And once again, QoR just start to collapse. Inrio gets 1, but he's immediately cut down by Asian, who's netted 5 in this game so far. It's only been 2 rounds, but I just keep seeing Asian on the scoreboard. Moses now the only player remaining in a 1v3, and I think that everyone knows where he is. They can hear this rappel. Asian currently playing inside a pantry, and I wanted to actually highlight the fact that Washington Wizards, like I said, not really doing much. They're not really doing all that much. They're just playing their game. They're just sitting and waiting. They are not pushing QoR to make these mistakes. It's just QoR. QoR are just simply making these mistakes, and Wizards have been capitalizing on it every single time. Candle being solo inside a stage, swinging too aggressively, not being found in a trade scenario. It just feels like QoR are all over the map and also not really accomplishing much.
Yeah, Woos will eventually shut it down. And now the 3rd round, completely untraded. It is getting a little bit scary. Obviously, as we spoke about in, the operator ban phase, that this is a very defender-sided map. But these 3 previous rounds, it's not a sense where it's just QoR being beat by how Skyscraper is shaped. It really does feel like QoR is just beating themselves. There's round after round where QoR never has a solidified idea of what Wizards are doing throughout the entire round, whether that be the roam, the positions of the defenders, or just simply the defensive setup on the bomb site. And because of that, it has allowed for them to just walk into a trap, essentially unknowingly. A lot of space around the map has purposely been given to QoR by Wizards, and QoR has just walked right into it, taking the map control that's been given to them. They haven't really done necessarily a good job in that early half of the round of like trying to directly attack these points, trying to counter these positions, trying to find gaps. And to be fair, there aren't a whole lot of gaps, but there also isn't really a lot of effort in QoR to try to find these gaps. I think a lot of these rounds are really falling apart because they just can't get that solidified idea of just what is happening.
Yeah, it just kind of seems like they don't really have a lot of presence in the game. And I don't mean that from like a map presence standpoint. I literally mean that from like they just don't really have a hold on this game. I don't think that they have really done much to prove that they are in control. I think it's more Washington Wizards. And I think that as they move over to this T-bomb site, things are only going to start to get worse if QoR can't switch it up. And with this current lineup, seems like that might be the play. Obviously, you still have the Doke and the Ace and the Monty. Those are kind of just what we've been seeing out of QoR. But with the addition of a Capitao, with the addition of the Sens, we're looking at a fast execute here. And I think, it could work. I think the one problem I already see with this is that Washington Wizards have been very good on their traits. So if QoR decide to go in, they need to be very careful of how they're pushing players out. They need to make sure that they are focusing on isolating whoever they want to get rid of whenever it comes to that map control. And they can do that with Moses on this Monty. But, Center's been saying it the best. He's been really passive on it. So I don't know if I can trust Moses to really be able to do that. But if you just have Asian walking down house stairs right into Rival, that's a really good way of winning a 1. And Rival will just simply take it as it falls right into his lap.
Yeah, a phenomenal find by Rival, not only understanding that this first floor is completely vacant from Wizards, but just playing that situation right, not overswinging, realizing that there was a player over by those house stairs coming into this position, just waiting for him to walk into it. And that's really important that in a lot of these rounds, it does seem like that when QoR isn't able to find something, they start to rush themselves. And because of that, they, don't check their corners. They make mistakes because of it. And with that, Wizards are able to punish them. But in this situation, even though they aren't able to get a second trade back, they're now going into this execution phase of the round. Sure, they don't have that map control, but they do have that man advantage, something they didn't really have previously.
This Black Stairs fight is very important here. Sentir on the smoke. No more gas grenades remaining. Can only rely on his teammates on the vert above with the Monty pushing him out. This is a very dangerous one-on-one for Center. Almost completely unwinnable, if we want to be honest here. Unless he can just... what? No way would I have predicted that to be the outcome. Just blast Moses in some magical fashion, and it's a 3 versus 3 all of a sudden. QoR have managed to force themselves up Black. Well, not just yet, as they'll try to do it. Have the Fenrir Mine on Black Stairs, so the intel is good. QoR absolutely not going to have the unpredictability factor on this execute, but what is the execute plan? That is also the question for QoR. You have 2 smokes on Inrio. You have 1 firebolt for him to deal with maybe Woo's in this corner here. But how do QoR get the case in? And if if Inrio just goes and dies with a Capitao bolt in his hand, that'll certainly help. QoR now just getting mowed down by the Washington Wizards. It's Woo's and Bino just cutting them down. QoR, they literally had that in their hands, and it just slipped right out.
It really goes back. It's almost as if I'm a fortune teller that, whether or not it is the Wizards doing it, I don't really see anything coming out of the Wizards to purposely try and deplete that drone economy and deny that intel. I think it's rather not necessarily not much focus from QoR on the overall intel game. I think it's just kind of a situation where they don't have an answer to turn this drone economy into definitive info, and because of it, you have rounds turn out exactly like the one previously, not being able to fully pressure that Black Stair player. And to be fair, there was no player behind the Monty. There was no immediate external pressure onto that Black player aside from the Monty in front of him. And a 1v1 with a Monty with no bomb down is still relatively easy. And now I'm starting to worry that this Wizards lead will not only be a 4-2, but it could even start to snowball into maybe a 5-1, God forbid, a 6-0. And sure, defense is great, but when you're down 6 rounds, you have to go flawless.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not much convincing me that QoR will walk away with this next round. And I think that's the thing. It's like, it's not really an upward momentum from QoR. They've been very stagnant in their play style. They've had a few rounds where, they don't lose all their bodies in like a horrendous 5 versus 2. I think that that's improvement for sure. But you still have those rounds where QoR will just get 2 players lost in a single gunfight. Rival has misdroned the player inside of Karaoke. And Twist is also dead. Asian is down, but in a recoverable position. Moses just walks into black. Center gets taken down by Candle. And Inrio is now in a 1 versus 4. It's like, I mean, I was literally analyzing the round and how it was like supposed to happen. And then the round happened. I mean, why? Anyways, Inrio still finds Asian. So QoR very much getting points up in the bait department, but not getting points up in the round department. That is the 5th round in a row from Washington Wizards, unanswered from QoR, and it's utter dominance on this skyscraper defense.
And it is another one of those things where obviously I think, we talked about there isn't a whole lot of prep to be done on Wizards compared to other teams. But it really just feels like a problem of just QoR not finding an identity, as you spoke about previously, but in a much smaller sense in this specific map, in this matchup. Because they're not able to find or get a hold of what Wizards are doing on this defense, they're not able to counter anything, they're not able to find the gaps because of it, because they don't even know where the players are. As you saw in the first round, they didn't even draw the player to Karaoke. But on top of that, there is nothing else making up for it. There's no player going huge. Sure, Rival does have 3 kills next to Inrio. To be fair, both Inrio and Twist are having a relatively difficult time now going 2 and 3 on the entry. And it's just kind of a situation where there isn't really a definitive, not game plan per se, but spearhead, whether it be a singular player, a strat, or just using that drone economy. There just really isn't anything in these rounds going into the favor of QoR.
Yep, not much favorability out of them for sure. I think that Wizards have kind of just been able to play their own game at times, and I think that QoR have made it very clear that they're submitting to it in a way. Wizards have been running around QoR and kind of just isolating gunfights, taking one-on-ones that feel really random, basically just doing anything in their power to throw off QoR in this push. It's not like QoR don't have an idea of what to do, it's just that they don't really have a way to put pen to paper. Regardless, though, there's some positives as Candle opening kill going in the way of QoR. Taking down Fens, but can they find a way to respond? Because last time we saw Goose, QoR got the opening pick with Rival onto Asian. The round did not go in their way, and I can't really say I'm too confident in calling this round just because QoR have the first frag.
And on top of that, not only the kill in this round, but the kill you were talking about when Rival got the entry kill, there were both situations where the player was either walking right into the line of sight of that entry player for QoR, or in this situation, Fen's playing uber aggressive, trying to go for that run out. I don't want to necessarily say that those entry picks, especially in this round, was given to QoR, but there was no real emphasis or effort to go out of their way to find these entry picks. And we've seen in rounds previously in this first half is in a situation where QoR are not given that first pick, when they're not given that opportunity to shut down an aggressive defender, that they're not really able to find it until late. And then on top of that, Dev finding an entry, an answer back onto Candle, yet again getting rid of a very important intel operator, but Twist is able to find one back.
It's a good pick from Twist. 3 versus 4. QoR actually getting away with an advantage, playing very patiently, and that's the thing that's helping them. They're outside the building. They're waiting for picks. They're playing crosses. Center was a dead man, whether he knew it or not. Walking into stage was his final goodbye to Washington Wizards. Bino and Woos now stand alone in a 2 versus 4. Woos actually tagging up, I believe, Moses. 8-0 on Woos, but it's looking like that's going to end here as Twist cuts down Bino, and a 1 versus 4 ensues for Woos. The support player, or ex-support player of LG, now working with the Washington Wizards, now working with his ex-CL4L core, but won't be able to work a 1 versus 4. Washington Wizards finally suffer their first blow. But QoR, they still have a lot of digging to do here.
There is a long way to go, a long road ahead of QoR on the defense. And, I think it's a situation where I do think they will get a couple of rounds. I don't think this series is over just yet. Also because we haven't really been able to see Wizards on the attack. We don't know if that, overall cohesion and coordination, especially in that early round on such a defender-sided map like Skyscraper, is there. So we could see some rounds start to buffer in favor of QoR. But again, it's just a round where we saw QoR been giving a lot of opportunities, and they were able to take advantage of those opportunities and turn them into picks. But again, it's kind of a round where if just, QoR is able to play relatively passive, wait for Wizards, just overextend, overswing in their positions, they're going to be able to give in those picks. But now that we're switching over to the attack and the defense, sure, we could see a completely different overall gameplay from QoR, but if we saw how aggressive that Wizards played on the defense, that should, in theory, translate to a relatively consistent early game from Wizards. And we've seen in that first half that the early game a lot of the times did completely favor the entire round.
One thing I'm also noticing out of Wizards is kind of just their individual plays a lot stronger than QoR's, and I think whenever you have a lineup like QoR who depend a lot, I would say, on their players performing well, it's not great whenever you have Washington Wizards just kind of already overperforming against you, especially whenever you are a tier 2 team officially. Washington Wizards, they're a qual team, we'll call them that. Qualifying for Crucible, obviously making a very impressive name for themselves. I feel like I don't need to tell you that these players are good. If you're caught up at all with the scene, you're probably well aware of all 10 of these names, or at least a few of them. Maybe Dev DTB might be confusing you. I think that's center. Mr. Devin. Met that guy in a ranked game once, and I actually did pretty good. He was really impressed, and I made friends that day. Yeah, it's cool. What in the hell happened to those players?
Might have been shot. I think they were shot by the top black player. I think.
Okay.
I mean, either
really
way,
weird.
Yeah, either way, you do lose 2 of those drones, and that's a lot of utility lost. Obviously, Moses is going to be able to shoot it up just right there. Still, no immediate pressure onto Moses. I think this is a fantastic job by him of identifying this, continuing to reside in this position, and again, there is no real answer for Wizards as lately. You see Asian eyeing to potentially walk up those stairs, but the shotgun, it's such a dangerous position to just ego chow, and he's going to have to try and make this decision soon, and with that smoke, it's just going to buy him even more time. Just a fantastic job by Moses of just wasting the time so early on.
Yeah, those three Flores drones might actually be brutal in the end of the day. Very costly if you cannot get Moses out of here. But he will just get pushed through the smoke. Fenn's fearless there and taking the map control. Honestly, a very smart move. Now has control of top black. And now Washington Wizards, they're a very cohesive unit making their way through. But Bino and Fenn's getting cut down on that top black take. That's your Osa gone. That's a very important operator for this execute. No more shields to rely on. Washington Wizards are going to have to walk into the crossfires of QoR, all with open holes just surrounding the bomb site. If Wizards can get in, it will be a miracle. Asian finds his way over to black rotate, but is simply dropped by Rival. It's all down to Woos now, as center is next to fall, making his way up black, but not able to find in Rio. QoR, very strong defense going into their defensive half, securing that T in karaoke. To be expected, despite the fact that Wizards lost so much utility early, there was a lot of control towards that top black that was established. However, with that Osa going down, it simply wasn't enough.
Yeah, a phenomenal round from QoR. I think the definition of that round was just sustaining the pressure. And another factor is that, like, throughout that entire round, the only real presence around the map that gave a threat to QoR was just that black stairs position. There was no one going over by Drums and Dragon. There was no external pressure on Geisha. And because of it, it's kind of a situation where QoR were allowed to just look at one point and then put all of their focus onto it. And when you have essentially all your players, aside from the Repel over by Barbecue, it's kind of a situation where you just have that C4, you can get rid of that Osa, especially just simply shooting her, and you just deny 2 entry points that rotate right into karaoke, and then also the doorway into T. It's kind of a situation where Wizards allowed for QoR to play a very simple denial in that execution phase, and I do want to see them be a little bit more flexible and take different points around the map.
Yeah, it is unusual to see QoR kind of just struggling with that, considering the fact that they haven't really struggled with it before. And I think that just partially, I also think that QoR on this map not very strong. We mentioned it in the pre-game desk, Goose. This is one of QoR's most banned maps. They do not like Skyscraper. As a matter of fact, I'm very surprised that they're playing Skyscraper. This could be a practice. This could be a, sort of like a, we want to learn the map angle. But right now, don't want to talk about their misfortunes as they are meeting fortune. And it seems like the game is getting a lot easier now that they've swapped sides as the Montaigne of center, first to fall, over by top black. Not even sure how that happened. Regardless, that is a very key player gone in this round.
Yeah, and on top of that, no answer back from Wizards, and QoR is still in control of this drums and, connector spawn point. Obviously, you're going to feel a little bit of pressure, and because of that, you're going to have Twist push back all the way to Dragon, but you still have this drums control. And with essentially now half of the round off the board, we're seeing yet again a round where Wizards are focusing on one point of the map, not necessarily multi-directional. They do get an answer back and clear this position, but now they don't have that wall open. They don't have any pressure from below, but a pick by Fens will add a lot to help them out.
I think that was over by the Dragon window, and that is a massive pick, like you mentioned. Fens going down the Azami, Twist rather, going down the Azami, and what a shot from Rival, though, is I actually just predicted the future. Fens does go down, but not after I said it. Now it's a 3 versus 3, and Rival actually holding down this Dragon position very well. With Woos getting cut down, this is going to allow Rival to be a little bit more fluid in this position, and he gets another kill onto Asian. It's a beautiful shot from Rival. Bino now left in a 1 versus 3. Unfortunately, that wall being open now going to work against him as he looks to push into Terrace with Rival pretty much just headhunting on that Dragon rotate. 50 seconds left. And despite the fact that Wizards got that oh-so-important frag onto Twist, and despite the fact that they got rid of the Azami in Dragon, Rival has still been a threat and just wasn't expected by the Washington Wizards. And Bino now in a 1v3. I mean, he's going to face the consequences of it. Wizards now all of a sudden find themselves as the baiters, not the baited. 25 seconds. He'll make his way into house and will immediately leave.
Yet another round.
The same door he came in. There you go.
Oh, and it does feel like that we're just having that side switch. Wizards having a little bit of difficulty just setting into the attack. And obviously, I don't want to take too much away from both Wizards and now QoR on the defense. I don't want to say it's just both teams not being able to play the attack on Skyscraper. Well, that may be the case many times. It could be the case. But in these first two rounds, again, as I said previously, in that mid-round transition, it just really seems like Wizards kind of like hyper-focus on one point, whether it be clearing a certain point of the map, and because of it, it takes a lot of their attention away from other points of the map. There was no pressure below like we saw. QoR put a lot of importance. There was no one really working that site external wall on balcony. And because of it, again, you're just allowing for QoR to play a very simple game. Focus on essentially one point or one direction of the map, and then give them plenty of time to react. And we saw on their defense, Wizards did the complete opposite, and QoR had a very difficult time. Obviously, they're two completely different sides, but because Wizards are playing essentially a different game down to the basic and micros of it, we're seeing QoR kind of flourish.
Flourish indeed. These past two rounds have been really good for them. I think undeniably they have played a completely different game, and I think that defense help. Defense switch will definitely help. But Wizards now have a really good opportunity to thwart that momentum. Going into a tertiary bomb site, going into barbecue and kitchen. This was the site that, remember, QoR managed to win on their only attacking victory. Wizards only need two dubs here. We asked of a 4-2 from QoR Gaming. We got a 5-1. So QoR were unable to find 2 rounds on attack. Can Wizards do that? Can they duplicate QoR's success? Can they get 2 rounds? That is the question. However, they still have to get through this geisha control. They still have to get above. It's not like every bomb site in this game is easy to attack, especially because it is Skyscraper. But this bomb site is the easiest.
Yeah, and it also gives Wizards a chance because this is a bomb site where you can't really just focus on one point. It's going to force Wizards to not only put pressure and try to attack this, bottom half. I really love this overall play Candle taking down Fence again, such a crucial pick. But having a center on the Blitz being backed up with Asian, it allows for them to kind of create a path. Nothing really definitively set in stone to allow for Center to enter his way through, but that pick onto Candle will essentially open up that complete position and allow for Center to just run and flourish in this position, apply pressure, clear an avenue, and it does look like that Wizards are trying to get this bomb down without having that complete top control.
It's a risky move for sure, but could work out if you're able to undercut the core gaming rotation. Obviously, you're only one hatch away from the bomb site if you're core. It's that Geisha hatch. I mean, it's definitely not the safest gamble, but if you can establish a ton of control over towards that top black side where there maybe isn't a lot of vert that they can work with, only inside of Karaoke can you really use all that verticality. You can't really get Center off of the position that he's in right now. He has a lot of control that can't be contested, and that's why a lot of teams tend to go for this side if they're going to go for a horizontal take. It's that stage and bathroom take because there's so much direct access into the bomb site. However, it's about getting control of above so that core can't play the vert. You can see that Washington Wizards, they don't really have control of above. They're instead just trying to cut core down whenever they decide to rotate over towards Karaoke. That is the plan for the Washington Wizards, but it's going to be a pretty big gamble. In goes the blitz. The plant is going down. Asian, he gets killed, but he does get in Rio. There's the drop, though! Rival denies the plant. There's 5 seconds left. Twist could still very much win this. All he has to do is deny. He goes for the swing and gets it! Bino, not covered in time. And Washington Wizards, they had it, but they couldn't close it out. Core now are dragging this game so close to being tied.
Oh, just honestly a huge blind point by only having one player on those black stairs. There was no external pressure on the balcony. There was no one trying to retake that space upstairs. And it allowed, even if it wasn't eventually, an immediate 2v1, but it allowed for essentially a semi 2v1. And the only point, aside from the vertical above, where you could have a player shoot that planter, Wizards had one player. They didn't have a cam. They didn't have any, nades to deny that space from being taken. And once that one player fell, all you had to do was swing it. You didn't even have to kill the guy covering the planter. You just had to kill the planter, run away, and you essentially win the entire round. Again, it's kind of a situation where we're seeing these attacking rounds from the Wizards. They are trying to set up a whole lot, but there isn't really any depth. And because of it, it allows for Core to just completely dismantle it, and there are really no second options. There's no good retakes from Wizards, and because of it, these rounds on the attack so far are just falling apart.
Feels like Core have single-handedly just taken control of this game. They've taken the reins. I think you'll just naturally have that outcome defending Skyscraper. But it does feel like Washington Wizards are kind of playing into Core a little bit. Ignoring that top 4 control is one thing. Trying to really force the vert play whenever you lost top black, by the way. Like, that was the big thing, was the fact that they lost black. Black control was the only thing holding Core away from just accessing that bomb site and denying that plant. That's all it took. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening with Washington Wizards. They just have one, it's like I can't remember the name of it. I think it's a Rupert's Glass? A Rupert's Drop? Yeah, that's what it is, the Rupert's Drop. Right? It's a Prince Rupert's Drop. It's a piece of glass where it's extremely strong on all points except for one. If you even apply a little bit of pressure to a certain point of the drop, it'll shatter. Right? That's what Washington Wizards are. It feels like Washington Wizards are kind of just, they have an entire plan. It seems really well thought out, but all it takes is one key position to get lost, and that attack just loses all momentum. However, with Wizards now being right outside the bomb site, it seems like they might not want to use momentum. It seems like they just want to get in and get a plant down.
Yeah, I also really love just the simple change of reinforcing that wall that previously would be rotated completely denies the entire game plan for Wizards. Again, you can see that they're just trying to force Center into this position to try and get the bomb down. You have Asian below trying to potentially apply a little bit of pressure, try and open the rotate if they aren't able to get that K claw. It does look like they eventually are able to make it a little bit more difficult than it should have been. But again, another round where this entire round just falls down. The entire win factor, just one possibility of getting this bomb down.
Well, in comes the Sens play. Center now just has to make the cross, and he will do it in time. Twist is the only one with a C4. Candle gets taken down. Twist is gone, but the plant still gets denied. Center and Bino falling. Fens is next thanks to Inrio. It's a 2 versus 2, and all of a sudden, Washington Wizards find themselves in a recovery phase as they try and get Center back up. The cross from the Warden is no good as Center still unable to get this bomb down, but the entire round is completely collapsed. There's only 3 players remaining, and Center's half a body, 20 HP and less actually to his name. Rival now just trying to fight Woos, the full HP player with a gun in his hand, the real threat at the end of the day, and it's Woos indeed to finish off Rival. Washington Wizards, they pick up the pieces of what seemed like a dramatic round and turn it into a victory. It's one more round away from them to lock out the series.
Yeah, a little bit of a misplay by that last core player. Just if he hadn't turned around, maybe even hid behind that little half wall there inside of T, it could have been a completely different round. But it's those small mistakes from core that allowed for Wizards to just get one round. And, you know, if core are able to win these 2 next, Wizards have at least locked in that overtime. But also another thing is, if you look at out that entire round, it was clear as day Wizards' game plan was to try and work the vertical from below to clear out that, you know, defender utility, get that wall open after that, and then try and get the plant down. Not only is that, you know, relatively a stock standard game plan, we've seen it 10 times out of 10, not even just in T3, T2, even in T1, but the fact that core weren't able to not only read into it, I'm assured that they did read into it, but they didn't have any pressure. They didn't send a roamer downstairs. There wasn't really any denial to try and remove Monty from his pace until he got into it. And it's kind of a situation where they just let Wizards do the work with no real pressure onto them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the theme we're noticing here, Goose, is most of the time these teams are winning their rounds because the other team is letting them. It feels more like, you know, core tripping over themselves or Wizards give up an early pick. That's the scenario here. It's the fact that these 2 teams don't feel confident in themselves, and it kind of shows. I don't feel like this doesn't feel like a very confident skyscraper team. None of these teams do, and I think that's why this map is here. I think it's because Washington Wizards and core are both expected to ban it. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of different variables that could go into it. It's a best of 1 ban phase. I mean, there's millions of different things that could have happened, so I'm not gonna assume anything. But what I will say is that core, I'm very comfortable saying, are not comfortable on this map. They have beat LIS on it before, but are now struggling against Washington Wizards, which is just not really what I would expect. I think that core are maybe playing a team that just is able to get into their own playstyle, get into their own groove, whereas core are kind of tripping up and they're kind of making their mistakes that at the end of the day are costing them. It doesn't really feel like Wizards are having to do much.
Yeah, and we can already see that there isn't a lot of early presence from the defense, allowing for Wizards to just take a lot of the space, work the time. And if you notice the clock, half of the round is now gone, still having to deal with this double wall. Obviously, was in the exact same place you would relatively expect him, being paired again with that shield inside of Dragon. So another round that is putting Wizards in a kind of similar execution. This is an attack, at least in this position over by Dragon, that they've had to deal with before. This time around, they have, you know, a couple more of those drones. They're more than able to get this shield down. It's going to put a lot of pressure, not only, but the mute chamber is able to deny and no immediate pressure. You're going to have to rotate the Ash behind this Monty to try and deal with these players. And so far, compared to the last round that they attacked this bomb site, moving relatively slower.
Got a lot of utility to clear out here, and a lot of positions that you're kind of unaware of. The Izami going to get spotted out here. Twist no longer a surprise factor. But if he times this well, could find Asian in his crosshairs and could find a potential first pick. Rival looking to do the same thing. Asian now swinging his way into Dragon. Still have to worry about Twist. Not going to use the Flores for Twist. Instead, trying to force the player out of Dragon. But you need to get rid of Twist here. He's absolutely a threat if he's not dealt with. Asian now walks in, and Moses is felled first. The Kiba barrier going to save Twist momentarily, but he'll immediately die. The Monty gets taken down. Woos also falls. It's a 3 versus 3. Washington Wizards are right outside of the bomb site, but they have 15 seconds left. Bino, a beautiful read. Candle gets cut down inside of Cups. It's all down to Rival and Inrio. Inrio has the angle, but doesn't find anyone. Fens an Asian instead. It's Rival! 3 kills inside of... I mean, what in the hell was that? Just 3 players looking directly into his direction. That was not a winnable scenario, and Rival still just manages to win it. John Wick. That was insane.
There's not a lot of times where you get 3 kills back to back to back, but that close to each other with not one player looking at you. But again, you know, I talked about earlier in that round that, especially in that Dragon position, that a lot of the focus right before the execution phase was to try and clear out that position from Wizards. And it was relatively exactly similar into the previous round that they had attacked that site, having that Warden behind the shield, and then having that, you know, Azami right in that little rat corner. But even with more time on the board relatively, a minute 20 compared to a minute, and then after that, knowing essentially the positions of these players, they kind of just stalled. Didn't really have any exact attacking utility to clear those players. Had a little bit of difficulty getting rid of the mute. It's kind of a situation where we're still starting to see these growing pains for Wizards. These are small and simple mistakes that happen almost on any map. It's not just Skyscraper. And because Score has that set in stone structure, they're able to kind of, you know, enable it. And on top of that, Rival having a fantastic game, it really is the spearhead for this defense.
I feel like once you finally had to, once you finally had Rival start to wake up, it feels like Core have been allotted a win condition. And I say that because specifically Core, that is their win condition. And it has been for a long time, is players showing up individually. Either Rival's a great prime suspect. Inrio will have great games from time to time. Twist is usually up there. Candle will be on and off. Moses, support player. I mean, kind of just up to the wind at that point, what his KD is going to be. So that's what my issue is with Core. That's my gripe with them, is that they're just so individually focused. Yes, Rival can carry them through this game, but can he do that in like a best of 3 scenario? Can he do that consistently? Can he do that, and can somebody else follow up with him? Those are all questions that I feel like Core find themselves wrapping their heads around just because of that play style. But I also think that with Core having T2 experience, they know how to play like a team, and that's why they're, kind of on the higher echelon of tier 2 teams. It's because they know how to play like a team. But sometimes it feels like that team just falls back on those individual gunners a little too much. Round 12, though, those highlight players absolutely need to come in big here.
Yeah, we can already see a change of pace. The focus on that black position now completely gone. You have that buck below to apply a little bit of vertical pressure. You also have the Dokkaebi outside of that geisha window, and you now have Fens rotating over to black. This is exactly what I was talking about that Wizards needed, was this multi-directional pressure, attacking Core Gaming from all different sides, essentially drawing their focus to multiple different points so they don't have that easy focus on just one point of where the diffuser going. And on top of that, also, it kind of denies the readability of this round, and now Core are essentially in a round kind of in the dark.
Wizards have been trying to go for this sort of quick hit for a while now, but they've always been stalled out. Fens, however, not going to abide by the rules of Core anymore as he makes his way in. 3 players are now suddenly dead for Core, but 3 players are suddenly dead for Wizards! What just happened? Core have come back, Twist with 2! It's all up to Bino! This round just completely ended in a split second. Washington Wizards were right outside of the bomb site. They had it all going for them. And now they don't even have control of the case. Bino has 15 seconds left, and he has to run a whole damn country mile to get to that diffuser. Rival and Twist will be in tow, waiting to gun him down. How does Bino walk away with this? How does he salvage this? Now starting to go for the plant. Now starting to alert Twist and Rival to go for that push. And QoR will send us to OT. Washington Wizards, despite the fact that they had so much control, they once again crumbled into the push. And QoR will deny the plant and will deny that attack.
Now, going into this matchup, QoR banning out the last map, essentially picking out Skyscraper, knowing that they would have to start on the attack. Both teams on their attacking sides got only 1 round out of 6. But because QoR started on the attack, and now that we have ventured our way all the way into overtime, out of the 3 rounds of overtime played, at least 2 of them, if we do need 3 rounds, QoR will be on the defense. And, if we are taking what we saw from regulation, that should put us in the mindset that this will be a QoR win, unless Wizards are able to change essentially their entire attack, especially on this map specifically. Both rounds that they attacked, not even the site itself, but also specifically that extension over in the Dragon, they had so much difficulty, no real answer to it, and I already love Fens swapping off of that Ying to go onto that Capitão, immediate pressure that doesn't require clearing a mute, getting rid of a shield. You can just shoot that Capitão bolt, immediately clear that player, and get that space, and already just adapting and changing. But again, we really need to see that multi-directional push, even from last round.
Also been seeing, I feel like, some utility woes. It feels like whenever Washington Wizards are so close to that execute, they'll lose key operators or just not have the utility to really battle QoR on that execute. And I feel like that's something that I want to highlight. And something that I want to watch out for. Yeah, Fens is on Capitão. Can he stay up? Can he keep those Capitão bolts to the end of the round or use them wisely, effectively? I think that it's not necessarily a struggle point that these teams have been having. It's just a reason out of the many that QoR or Wizards have been losing rounds. I feel like Wizards have been pretty good about their clears of these Kiva barriers in particular. Getting rid of Twist hasn't been much of a challenge for QoR, except for that previous round that we just watched. Albeit, Twist is able to waste a lot of time and adds a ton of value, being able to cut down the clock in the way that he does. So it's a balance of time and pressure that you want to deal with here. And Twist will be able to waste a ton of time if he just continues to put down these Kiva barriers as Washington Wizards try and approach him. But he's immediately cut down. So as I say that, I get Caster's Curse. Candle is 6-12 and is also not in this round. Surprise.
And on top of that, all they now have to deal with is just Rival in this shield. They have that Capitão bolt still on hand, 2 of the Firebolts even, so they could just dump that on the shield even if they wanted, get rid of that player, and they would still have a 2-man lead going into the execution. With 1:20 still on the board, there's still so much time. Having this Monty as a spearhead now allowing for them to not only take more space in the previous 2 times that they attacked this bomb site, but on top of that is allowing them to get a lot more info on these last couple of defender positions.
Yeah, that's especially important, is you're kind of just cutting down the amount of control that you need to fight for here. But Fens is gone. There's the Capitão, man. Just immediately cut down Rival. 16 kills on the board. And this is Rival's spot. This is his damn spot. I don't know if anyone remembers that, the Rexon clip. Oh, man, what a classic. And there he is! It's his damn spot! A second kill from that position, but it won't matter. Asian and Woos just clean house as Washington Wizards. I don't even know how that happened. QoR were literally sitting inside the bomb site and suddenly just take one-on-ones against Washington Wizards. And they just managed to push through. That's a successful attack out of Washington Wizards. And I think only their third one at this point.
Yeah. It is
no, there's six.
very...
No, their second one. That's their second attack?
Yeah, their second one on attack. QoR are in a very dangerous position now. Because not only did they lose that very first defensive round, but in a very decisive fashion. In my opinion, I really do feel like they tried to do a little bit too much, especially on that extension from Azami. I feel like it kind of just putting herself in a position where she didn't really need to be, essentially put herself in too hot of waters even. But again, it's just phenomenal gap spotting and coordination from Wizards to just work off of those ones, shut down those 2 players very early on. And sure, you did have Rival trying his best to work their way back into the round, but when you have such a high lead with two players, a 5v3, there's really only so much you can do. And now, Core are going to have to do exactly what Wizards did and go really huge on this attack. And keep in mind, they've only won one entire round. That round in itself was still a struggle.
Back to this defensive position, back potentially driver's spot. Saw how easy it was for completely cut down Core on the defense, and I'm worried that the same thing could happen. You still have Moses on Monty though, which is one thing that I feel like could help them, but I don't think the Monty has been all that strong out of Core. Moses having a pretty bad game, by all means. I'm not really worried about his kills, just more so the fact that he dies a lot on shields. Oh. Center, completely gunned down by Twist on that rappel. Very interesting angle there. Just completely finds the deepest corner he could. I think trying to maybe clear out anyone in the house corner, but instead finds Twist walking, or rather Center walking up house stairs. Now Wizards trying to fight uphill. They're going to have to fight upstream and maybe get a pick.
Yeah, and sure, you did get the opening pick. You got it onto a player that does add, quite a bit, but now with Asian shutting down Rival, arguably the most important player for Core, especially going in that latter half of the round where you need a very impactful entry player. Now they're going to have to simply rely on their positions, making sure that they could potentially catch off an isolated defender over swinging. But Wizards, they're coordinated. They're well deep into this first map, the only map at that, and they know exactly that they just need to play passive, wait for Core to make the very first move and walk into their crossfires that they've set up, and there really are not a lot of options for Core, and on top of that, just not a whole lot of aggression coming out.
Again, Rio's a big deal breaker here. Not a house that they use it to. That's the play he Asian. Off the handle actually used that really well. Bino has the angle onto him. On though, and last time around, the main issue that they had was Moses not able to really get this plant down. But considering that Asian is dead, considering that C4s are gone, the only people on Washington Wizards that can affect this plant are the people outside of the bomb site. Inrio still has firm control of basement. There's really not much that Core can do except for wait. And as a kill comes their way, courtesy of Inrio, it's going to be the attempt at this push. Fens, however, meeting him at house stairs, puts us at a 2 versus 2. Moses has the diffuser, has to be very careful about what he does next as he eats a goo mine and now dies. It's a one-on-one, but it's Twist to win it, and Core will send us to round 15.
A phenomenal job. I talked about losing Rival, essentially your main spearhead, the player that was going to get those kills to open up the entire bomb site. Very first pick off of the board. You needed to see a lot of emphasis from Core to put themselves out there, go and seek those kills rather than waiting for Wizards to make the first move. And the Wizards were not going to. And Core more than definitely understood that, going out of their way. A great vertical play down below with the buck from Twist was able to shut out a very crucial player inside of Showcase, essentially allowing for that entire bomb site to open up. Obviously, it was still an absolute dogfight of a round, coming down to eventually a 1v1, but again, that coordination that we didn't really see, especially in the execution phase from Core on the attack, was all there. The formula that they'd been missing that entire first half, while it was found really late, it was in the right exact moment, the last chance possible. Moses also potentially could keep away from the fact that he's playing Clash. They may or may not know he is going to be on this operator, but whether or not they do know, he will have a huge impact of just simply not only denying time, but space taking from Core, or Wizards rather.
I really can't, just not help but look at Moses' KD. It's really funny. I get that he's been playing Shields the entire game, but what? He was 0-10, I think, at some point. Like, he's just not even been participating. So, with the fact that you have 3 people going double digits on Core, one of them almost dropping 20, and 4 people going double digits on Washington Wizards. After all of that, Candle and Moses combined still can't get double digits. I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was really funny. But anyway, we need to get a little intense. Washington Wizards are 7-7 now with Core. Very much a spot that they maybe didn't expect, given that they were up 5-1. Convincingly, I should add. Up until Core secured that first attack, and from then it was just snowballing into those defensive rounds. Washington Wizards almost cut it close, bringing it to 6-3, I believe, before Core were able to come back, and now we're here. Moses already approaching Wizards with this clash once again. A player that we've highlighted for all the wrong reasons. Something that we're going to have to look out for is that clash and how much presence that shield can apply.
Yeah, lucky enough for Moses, the main goal of Clash is to not get kills, just simply deny space, apply a little bit of extra and additional pressure. And I do believe that maybe Core thought there was going to be more of an emphasis on that dragon take, as the rounds previously, but Wizards just putting a lot more emphasis on just simply going for a site take, putting all of their focus on just trying to get a kill, an entry kill, just anything to get themselves into this bomb site. That player going to be Asian, but Rival, the absolute perfect player to shut him down, and another one for him, and now a 3v5, the last chance for Wizards, and just 40 seconds left on the clock.
Those individual plays, Rival shows up when it matters, but don't drop your that Wizards. They don't have a lot of map control, but they might have an in into the bomb site. If they can find Rival here, that'll be a massive pick, but he's just going to stay there. Split is inaccessible by Washington Wizards. They're just going to have to walk in and get cut down to the cup. Loses first. Bino and Center most likely to follow, with Inrio and Candle just staring down the wall. The flash now coming into play. It's the best of one. So as we say, it's speed. Bino can do all he wants. Not winning this round. Or is he winning this game? 5-1 start from Washington Wizards. Talking in chat the entire game. But Core, hold on. Even basically 4 players on their team at some point. But Moses came out big there in the last round. Core, 8-7 on Skyscraper.
Yeah, a phenomenal job by Core of just sustaining the pressure and finally getting the revenge. And that's it. That's the very first game, and it's Core who won it out. There's no best of 3. There is no infinite overtime. They are 1-0, and it's kind of a situation where it really does just seem like that Core was the better team.
Yeah, that was quite the match. I will bring back the memory that this was almost a grudge match between Washington Wizards and Core, and Washington Wizards were the previous victors of that. So it almost looked like it was going to be another blowout in their favor during the first half. They had that 5-1 half starting on defense, but the second Core switched to defense, they really started to bring it back. What do you guys really attribute to them getting that momentum back in their favor?
I definitely think that last attacking round helped probably more than anything else. A 6-0 would have probably been chalked at that point, but I think that Core rallying back on attack was really important. And again, switching over to defense, I mean, Goose, we saw it happen like time and time again. I mean, you can Skyscraper is just defender-sided, man. I mean, that's just how it is sometimes. Yeah. So I think that's part of it. But I also do think that Core started to really figure out their team play and their individual players. I mean, Rival getting 19. Insane performance out of him.
Yeah, so obviously there was kind of Rival for Core really bringing out the personal plays. Do you think that Washington Wizards had any player that really stood out to you, Goose?
I don't think there was one player that really just kind of brought those rounds back, because there wasn't really a situation where Washington Wizards needed it. When they lost a round, it kind of all fell apart all at once. There were really not a lot of situations where there were a last chance opportunity to bring the round back. And to be fair, that is just because Washington Wizards did a phenomenal job at that early to mid round. I hate Skyscraper because a lot of times, especially for the start of a league, you can't really tell problems of teams on the attack because it's just so defender sided. But there were a lot of instances that we just didn't see that coordination. We didn't see everybody on the same page. I think there were a lot of situations where they just put too much emphasis on one point, of that being getting the bomb down, not having a lot of flexibility. But at the end of the day, yeah, I just really do feel like even if it was a good game, there is still a lot to work on.
Yeah, it was definitely a close match. We went literally to the last second in max overtime, which is not something that's super common. So it was very clear that both of these teams wanted to win tonight, and unfortunately we can only have one winner. Jazz, do you have any last thoughts about these two teams before we take a break?
Yeah, and actually I feel like it leads into our next point and our next game, considering that we're going to be watching QoR again. This time playing against my least favorite team in all of T3, Space Shubes. And I have to legally say that every time I say that name. It's a rule that I have. But yeah, QoR, I mean, I feel like that was the one thing that was running through my head, marinating the entire game, was kind of just, if QoR loses this, they have another game after this, and that could potentially be affected. But considering that QoR are riding high off of that comeback, and obviously Washington Wizards gave them a little bit of power there because they were trash talking the entire game, I feel like QoR are really up and high concerning that performance, and they should be heading into this next game against Space Shubes.
Yeah, I think, Space Shubes is a team that does rely on a lot of structure and also players showing up. We'll speak about that a little bit more in the pre-show for that match. I think it's a really good matchup where it's not going to be just really necessarily easier. I do think on paper it should be, but it's going to be a team that matches them on a lot of fronts. Washington Wizards was a completely different team, essentially, compared to QoR. But yeah, just best of one, and we have one more, and we're surely should go to that soon.
Yes, we will be back in a couple minutes with Space Shubes versus QoR. I wish them both the best of luck, and we will be back after a short break.